Welcome to the fourth session of this school year from BISLN, British International School Library Network, brought to you by Concilium Education. I'm Sally Flint, Senior Library Consultant at Concilium. Today's session is led by Andy Homden, founder of Concilium and editor of International Teacher magazine. With more years of experience than Andy may care to admit, as a head, CEO and senior administrator, Andy is so well placed to discuss long-term development planning from a whole school perspective. He has valuable insights on how to position library provision at the very heart of this process and ensure it is a priority for school leaders. Music to our ears. Enjoy the session.
So thanks very much indeed, everybody. Great to be with you this afternoon, this evening. And the focus of this session is long-term planning, as Sal was saying, strategic planning, development planning, we're going to call it. And basically, what I've done is to try and apply the ideas that I developed as a school principal to the ideas that you might find useful as librarians. So I'm not coming at you from a technical point of view. You know your library technicalities much better than I do, but maybe this will help you give a bit of a shape about what you might include in a development plan. But my aim is to try and empower you as librarians to grow your influence in the school through a coherent approach to development planning, which in my experience, the people who are heads of department who do this well are the people who expand their influence in the school and therefore are listened to, and therefore when they start bidding for things in budget time, they tend to get more than other people. So this is perhaps a way of extending the influence of the library over the course of the next 3 years, just as much as it is about development planning. So what does a good development plan look like? Well, here are some ideas. In common with any development plan at any level in any school, it will have a purpose. And you can show that purpose, the justification for what you're doing in a statement about your mission. You might have a slogan or a motto that goes along with it as well. And that's always a good way of getting a commonality, a common approach to your plan by discussing these things at the very beginning with your team members and with other people. So what's the purpose of it? The plan should show that. How is it funded? You ought to be able to know what you've got available to spend in order to put your plan into practice. What's the direction of the plan? Where are you aiming at? And perhaps as we go through this afternoon, you might think through what your library might look like. I'm going to give you a 3-year period. What might it look like in 3 years' time that will be different from how it looks like today? What will it have? What will it be able to do? And so on. And how are you going to get there? So think of your own library about what it's going to be like in 3 years' time and the sort of things you need to do to get there. A good plan is also, in my view, prioritized. You cannot do everything, and people feel overwhelmed at any level of leadership if they don't prioritize. So what are the key things to get done in order to get to your destination, and what priorities are you going to have in? I mentioned the idea of budget. It should have a clear indication about how you're going to fund the different elements of your plan. And that funding will reflect your priorities, and you're going to have to bid for that funding to get it and convince people that they should be spending money in the library in order to achieve the overall aims of the school, quite apart from the aims of your library. It should be flexible. Although there has to be, in my view, clear direction and a clear destination and a clear purpose, you're going to have to bend. You're going to have to be, as I sometimes say, strong like bamboo. You're going to have to give a little bit and take a little bit. And there are good ways, in my opinion, of building in to plans, elements of flexibility, which will enable you to keep your direction, keep your purpose, but give a little bit, to be able to compromise here and there when you need to. It should be clear. it should be trackable. In other words, as you go through, it will really help you to be able to demonstrate to people how the plan is being put into practice, and to collect good evidence as you go along to show people that you're doing what you have said that you're going to do. And that always helps with the bidding the next time round, and your credibility the next time round. And again, it will come into that point, that perhaps political point, of growing your influence across the school, which is a theme that we've been picking up over the course of the year. You need to establish a school presence. You have to be visible in your planning. So who will get it? Who will get a copy of your document, your development planning document? What would they use it for? How might they use it? In my view, it should have a name. And giving a plan a name helps visibility. And you might run a little competition amongst the kids who use the library, your library monitors, perhaps your library prefects. Why not design a little logo that shows what the plan is like in practice? In fact, that's a really good way of connecting and communicating with the graphics or the marketing departments in the school to bring more people on board to help them understand your vision and what you want to do. In my opinion, there is another strand at the bottom there. Libraries are about language and about literacy. This can be the literacy of anything. It's not just the languages that are being taught or acquired at the school. It's the literacy of science. It's the literacy of economics. It's the literacy, as we were talking about this morning, of social and emotional feelings, to enable kids to develop ways of expressing themselves about how they feel as they go through perhaps their teenage years and so on. So language development, in my view, has a particular place in the development planning for a library. That's just an idea.
Would you say, Andy, that if you're like in a school where you're an fairly established librarian, and your plan and the school's plan should be in harmony in a way, yeah?
Absolutely.
So in some ways, it's kind of like your library plan is a mini version of the whole school plan and what you need to attain that vision, yeah?
I think that's a really good way of putting it, actually, because unlike almost any other department, you are whole school in a way that other departments or other year groups are not. And you are the knowledge of the whole school. You're the physical embodiment that's neatly organized of the knowledge that's going on and being acquired by the whole school. So yes, I think being tightly aligned to the school development plan is a really good idea. And knowing what, say, the priorities is in the current school development plan will really help you.
Yeah. And yet it seems, like often we talk about how librarians and we're always kind of fighting to be heard, but yet, I mean, I think I'm just repeating what you're saying. It just does just go in hand, doesn't it? That life's so much better when we're on the same page with it.
Absolutely. Let's think of an example. Say, for example, in the whole school development plan, the school is getting a new school sports hall, for example. Okay, that's going to be a big deal in the history and the life of that school. So why not echo that plan by looking at the literacy of coaching, sports excellence? What does it mean to be an elite sports person? And so kids and teachers can explore that meaning and be able to express themselves when it comes to debates about, I don't know, what time they have to give up to become an elite sports person, which was an issue that I know that affected both you and I when we were at Bangkok Patina. There were some great kids there who were going to be stars at tennis, at swimming, and so on. But my goodness, the hours they had to put in. So to be able to discuss that and develop that kind of sports literacy, I think could be very interesting. So let's think about how you can prepare for writing your development plan. And let's think about, yeah, librarians. And this reflects the idea that it's a whole school thing. Librarians are the people that everyone can just drop in on and chat to. And building the relationships with people is a great way of starting to collect the kind of valuable information that you're going to need to give you direction, to give you purpose, and to justify the kind of budgets you're going to bid for. So I generally start with just doing a personal SWOT analysis. And I know these have been around for years and years and years, but in the end, looking at your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to a department, and the library is no exception, is a great balanced way of trying to assess where you are as an institution, as an organization. And ask other people what they're doing and what analyses they're coming up with in other departments. The school should be doing this as well. I know that we used to go through that kind of collective thinking at the beginning of a school year, perhaps, when we knew that we had a whole school development plan coming up in a year's time. So start with yourself, do it with your library staff, expand it. What do they see the weaknesses as? What do they see the threats as? Because it's going to be slightly different. See if you can get in on the agenda of leadership teams, faculty teams. You won't be able to attend everybody's, but one or two during the course of a term is really great because you can start gathering people's views in this situation. And if you can get on the agenda to do a SWOT analysis of your library, so let's say a math faculty meeting, well, fantastic, because you're going to get a very specific point of view that you might not have had before. Those informal, open-ended conversations are fantastic when people are just relaxed. They come in, they're watching their kids go about doing their work in the library, just that chat. And if something comes up, oh, I wish they could do this, or I often think that, write it down. When they've left, just write it down in your journal, in your notebook, and start building up a view of how other people are seeing it to inform your development plan. So these people can be kids will have the most amazing ideas. I wish we could. I wish we didn't have to. Da, 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 da. And visitors, whoa, that's great. You could do with more of that. Governors will do this as well. So if you can take advantage of those informal conversations and somehow just jot down a couple of notes, they can be invaluable. Putting together a simple Google Docs survey is a little bit time consuming, but it can actually really produce dividends and get the opinions of a lot of people. Whole staff can contribute to that and produce really good data very quickly, very simply. Coming back to your whole school point, Sal, you are in a unique position to join the dots, to make connections. Someone was in the other day talking about the need to do X, Y, and Z. And that's similar to what you're saying. Or you might hear someone in the primary section echo something that's being said in the secondary school, and they wouldn't be necessarily aware of what each other is saying. Make those connections, see if you can help them to pursue those connections, and that makes you useful. You're a knowledge source. You're everybody's helper. And in the era of interdisciplinary work, transdisciplinary work, cross-disciplinary work, you are in almost a unique position to be able to suggest connections to people and then encouraging them to use the library as a hub to pursue those connections.
Yeah, I was just thinking how great it would be if schools taught their middle leaders, and maybe some do, for this to do exactly what you're showing us how to do now. It'd be so helpful, I think, if there was a general inset on that in schools and kind of, keeping awareness of what's going on everywhere else as they're putting their own plans together, because it can become divisive, can't it, when really there's absolutely no need for it to be so.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, if you're everyone's friend, if you like, you're everyone's helper, and they become to look to you for further help and advice. So yeah, those connections, when there's so much emphasis in looking at being outside the subject areas and making those cross connections. Maybe John, later on, you can talk about a little bit about how you're seeing that with the EPQ and the other project-based um, uh, initiatives you're working on, and perhaps what you've seen in action. Um, that I think this is really valuable for librarians to think about, because you're going to get closer to getting a justification that really appeals. And you do have to have that political clout in order to get what you want, to be honest. And so if everyone thinks of the library as being a supportive institution, it really helps you. So some of the document, the components of the document, just to be thinking about. It should be a physical document as well, I think. It should be a printed document. It should have all the attributes of a really well-produced printed document, with a cover, with an illustration, with a logo, with a name. It should have a preamble, which is about the justification for you wanting to do this with your team for the school, because you've heard this, and this, you've got this, and this information. That is going to inform the development of this library so we can serve the school. And perhaps it's in the process, it's an idea to think about yourself as a service provider for everyone in the school, and that the people who come to the library to be supported and helped, they're your clients, and they are people who you want to help and support. So if you can build that in, and then, as you were saying earlier on, Sal, relating it to the whole school development plan at the same time, what you're doing is you're building up a raison d'etre, a reason for being, and something that really can boost your standing when it comes to, I don't know, faculty meetings and staff meetings and general presence. You need a short paragraph just to show how the library is going to be different after 3 years, or whatever the period of time is worth. I'm often asked, development plan, is it 10 years? Is it 5 years? Is it 3 years? I've found that 3 years is just about the best, but that's just my personal preference. A lot of things can change in an international school, particularly in 3 years, and you might need to go back to the design a little bit more frequently in an international school as opposed to a national or a UK-based school or whatever. But 3 years is, in my view, quite a nice compromise. What are the key milestones you're going to have on the way? In this area, we're going to do this. In this area, we want to do this. And then make sure, and we've got a little bit more about this later on, of your budget and planning categories. What areas are you planning in, and how are they going to be funded when it comes to putting those ideas into practice? So how are you going to identify the cash funds that are available to you to spend on the things that you think you need to spend on? So we'll come back to budget in a little bit more detail later on. Year one is the next year. This will be described in some depth because it's the starting point, and you are directly following on after a budgeting period, so you can be fairly sure that you're going to get what you need. You're going to be aiming at what's coming your way, their way, everyone's way in 3 years' time, but you can get this journey started by mapping it out in some depth at year one. Year two will be a little bit more outline-ish, because you're going to have to adapt that as it goes along. And 3 years, the third year of the plan, you'll have the template, but not much in it at the moment. But that gives you wiggle room and flexibility to adapt and make concessions, be diplomatic. one of the things that I remember over the years was, this was at Alice Smith School. We really wanted to prioritize, I think it was a 6 science lab and an adjunct to the sports hall. We knew we couldn't afford both. There just wasn't the funds. So sat down with the head of PE, head of science. They said why they needed it. And then, they listened to us saying there's only finite funds to go around. And they said, okay, we're going to get back to you and tell you what we've decided as a senior leadership team. And what came out of it was great, because we decided that we had to have that 6 science lab. We just couldn't do the program properly without it. But we also really wanted the sports hall. So the head of PE was told, put that on your development plan for the year after next, and it will get top priority. And that's how he was happy that he knew what was coming. Science was getting on with it, and the sports hall could go on. The sports people could go on with making their plans. So think about that in the same way. Tracking paragraph: what evidence are you going to look for? Evaluation and preparing for year 2, just a very short report on progress at the end of each year, very short. We've done this, we hit that milestone, we've hit that milestone, and so on. And be prepared to submit a short report to your line managers, to your leadership team, with the evidence that you've done this, this, and this, and you're within budget and you're on target. That kind of thing goes down well, and it builds up your credibility when you come to bid next time, and so on. So those are the sorts of things that might be included in a development plan document.
I was thinking, Andy, as well, it's so valuable and useful to have all that recorded, because particularly internationally, if there's a high turnover of staff, then as long as there's a good transition from one librarian to the next, then it's not all wasted, if you like.
It's never wasted. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, Sal. And what we used to do is, if there was a key position, let's say we were advertising for a new librarian, because the current librarian has gone on to bigger and better things, we'd send the candidates for the job the development plan.
Right.
And that was a really great way of focusing them on the realities of the school, what could and couldn't be afforded, and it led to some really great questions and answers in the interview situation. So development plans can be used for all sorts of things, and your point about continuity is a really good one. Yeah, totally agree.
That's great. I'd never thought of a development plan being part of an interview process, but that makes so much sense.
I found it just so invaluable. 2 things, documents I would always try. Well, one, always the job description, when we talk about that. But I think the development plan brings out people's enthusiasm, brings out people's spark. Or I could do something with that. And in year 3, you're planning this. We've just done something like that as well. Yeah. And that's helpful for the interviewer, because you're picking out the experience that's relevant for your plan. And, it can also help you identify the people who've really thought about your school, because they've taken the trouble to read the plan and get excited by it.
Yeah. Do you know what, though? I wonder in the library world how many interviews and so on there isn't a job description for librarians. I'm curious, because it's kind of back to that kind of not being part of all this process and being the centre, but just kind of being on the edge and no one actually knowing, what
that might be something we need to talk about in a coming thing, in a coming session, because how can you be evaluated or developed without comparing what you've actually done to what's in your job description?
I know I wrote my own after.
And so you should. And get it signed off. Yeah.
I don't know if I fulfilled all aspects of it, but I tried.
I'm sure you did. Let's look at the connection between the development plan, bidding, budgeting, and tracking. So the bid document. This is the document which is really your prototype development plan. Okay, because it's got the vision, it's got the justification, the mission, it's got elements of what you need to put that into practice, and you will have started costing this. And generally speaking, this bid should be made as part of your school's budgeting cycle. So find out and get into a position in good time when the bids, if you do it this way, and I hope you do, when the bids are there, and think about what you've spent in the past, what you need to spend in the future, and your priorities that are being informed by all those pieces of evidence that we've mentioned earlier on. So make that bid in good time using the criteria that the school wants and with your justifications and vision ready. These are typical areas for spending, budget areas for your spending. Your operating budgets for early years, primary and secondary, your capital budget, the big items, which will be written off over the course of 5 years so that you will know when it's due to be replaced. Your staffing and training budget is sometimes a budget that's overlooked, and yet you should know what your staffing budget is, and you should be able to go to a leadership team and say, look, I've got this, and this number of staff. I can't do this because of that. I need another half librarian assistant, or I need another assistant, because I can't cover my library, for example, in the secondary school, when I have to go down and check on the primary school. And some kind of budget will allow me to fulfill the mission to encourage kids to come into the secondary school library all the time, you know, those 14 and 15-year-olds, and I don't want to close it when I go down and check on primary, you know, that kind of thing. A project budget. We talked a couple of sessions ago about library design, and this will normally mean something rather more substantial. It could involve more capital items. It could be a complete refurb of your shelving units. It could be a new sort of desk. It could be anything. But don't be afraid to say, we need to think about a project here to fulfill the school's aims over this year through the library, and to do it properly, we need to spend a little bit more money than usual. But be realistic as well. In the operating budgets, acknowledge what you've been granted in the past, and don't repeat what has been asked for and granted in the past, but build on it and be realistic. So people appreciate you showing your own knowledge and mastery of the budgets that you've been in control of for however long you've been there. So enter into those timelines, the consequent action, how you'll track it, and so on, and how the overall plan is going to build up, so you can build up the evidence as you go along. You shouldn't just be saying, okay, I'll write an evaluation of the development plan at the end of 3 years. My strong view is that you should be doing it as you go along, as you're passing those milestones, collecting the evidence, and you're making your annual bid to keep that development plan going and expanding and being fulfilled. So this is what just go back, sorry. This is what an annual development plan timeline kind of might look like. You've got your planning categories to your left. Okay, fairly self-explanatory. Mentioning all and organizing all the things that I've sort of mentioned over the last 20 minutes or so. And filling in over term 1, 2, and 3, if that's what you offer, or your semesters, if that's what you offer, some of the details. And these are just examples, really, but the kind of examples that you might be thinking about. So you might have decided and been granted a fund to expand your pre-K picture book library collection. Okay, this is how we're going to do it. And then you can track that very easily by the purchases being made and the feedback you're getting from your pre-K teachers about the impact of those picture books, because you've actually listened to them as to what picture books they would love to have in the school and which you don't have. A little example of language development, say upper primary are doing some work to get across the scientific method in their topic work. You might say, yes, we can support you with the language and history of science. You're doing some stuff on geology, you're doing some stuff on dinosaurs. Why don't we look at some of the stuff related to famous geologists, famous paleontologists, and so on, or whoever the science is, and then try and build in some of the key words that might become part of a display. This doesn't cost anything, but it will be really relevant if the say year 5 and 6 teachers want kids to understand what a constant is, for example, or a variable in the scientific method, so they start building that language. And this morning, Sal, someone said they don't have book weeks anymore. They have literacy weeks, didn't they?
Yeah, that was fascinating. I like that. I like that approach. Although I do love a good book week too, but in that it took away anything gimmicky or it just being a cute kind of thing to do. It kept the learning, I think, at the focus of it. So yeah, that was interesting. Irina's just put a note on the chat. And I was saying, this is really helpful, but it is overwhelming, just kind of knowing where to start,
Yes.
But the points, as you've laid them out, should help a little bit at least. But yeah, I get that feeling. It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
I think people, when they're introduced to these ideas for the first time, absolute cognitive overload, sort of spread it, compressing it all into an hour. So take your time, look at it when we put it up onto the website, download it, tear it apart, get in touch with us and say, look, what did you mean by this? And how can we do that? And then if you need additional help, you can get in touch with Sal and we can say, okay, we can do this, this, and this for you. Yeah, that kind of thing. I do think it's worth getting on top of if you can, because it will really take the library forward in under control. I know it's a learning thing, and it's not easy.
it's like one more. How like I always say, librarians have got so many different hats,
Yeah.
and it's another hat, and I can see what a valuable hat it is. And I wish, to be honest, I'd kind of got my head around this sooner. It's like, when you're busy with the kids and the actually teaching and so
Yeah.
on, it's easy to think, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. It's like setting aside a little bit of time every day to stay on top of
Yes.
this kind of.
Planning your time, I think, and prioritizing, because you can't do everything. And you've got to be strict with yourself. I wasn't very good at this, I have to say. Strict with yourself about what is more important than something else. So you can't do everything, but if you have anything, it will be your vision, your mission, and your plans that will develop and evolve, guided by the direction that you set yourself at the beginning. So you can regard it as a 3-year learning process rather than something that has to be done all at once. And it is a process. I think, was it Michael Fullan, the great Canadian educationist, said, change is a process, not an event. And this is a process. You will be doing much better with this the third time you do it compared to the first time you do it. You can't help. And Fullan also had a lovely idea of the implementation dip. He was an expert on change in education. And I found this a very, very useful concept. He said, look out for the implementation dip. When you start something new, whatever it is, a program, a development plan, or whatever, you are probably going to get worse at something first, and you have to unlearn some of the other things to learn the new things, and then gradually you get on top of it and you overcome the dip and you move forward. So I understand exactly how you feel, Irene. I really do. But if you are able to do this consistently, and you can talk to your head about this, Chris, who I know is one of these people who plans something like this, I think. that would be something to build into your own personal PD as well. You want to get better at this, so take your time, do it as you go along. John, this is something that I thought of with you in mind, and suggested by something in an article that Sal wrote for this month's International Teacher magazine. Secondary library. Sal, you had a joint sort of initiative with the history department to do a project-based piece of learning, and you sat down with the history department to write joint rubrics for the project. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think what was happening was we were teaching research skills and plagiarizing and referencing and citations and all that stuff. But it felt so much more valuable when it was in a real context. And I didn't want to wait until, because it happens at IB level, say you just do it and it's there. But we actually did it in year 5 and 6 as well. But the project you're talking about, I think, was in about year 8. And so when it wasn't just history, it was with other subjects as well. Part of their rubric criteria was also always addressing sort of what are traditionally known as library skills, if you like. So it wasn't when the history teachers were marking their work, they were looking at how well they'd used sources and how well they'd referenced and all that kind of I can't remember the details now, but that kind of thing, so that it was kind of going both ways. We were involved in what they were doing. The kids would come and get help if they were struggling with it. But then it was part of their final assessment, and it just made it feel, be more meaningful.
And when they come to their EPQ or extended essay, they will have felt the confidence of doing that. They've been learning that over a number of years. And when it comes to the one that actually counts as, I don't know, half an A level or 2 points on an IB scale, they're going to feel much more confident about getting the 40 in your IB diploma rather than the 37 or the 38.
Yeah, I
That
think
kind of payoff is
Chloe would
important.
know a lot about that as well, and making, the cross-curriculum links and building the library into what you're doing in the extended essay and that type of thing.
And when you look at the requirements, say for schools in Dubai, they've got to demonstrate cross-curricular links and links to real life as well. So getting to the habit of doing it through the library, I think, could be really quite interesting. Let's move on. I can, yeah, here we go. So the first edition of your development plan that you'll publish before the first year of the development plan will look something like this. Your year 1 maps that I've just shown you an example of will be quite detailed. Year 2 might be things that you've had to delay, but you've been promised that you can have in year 2 rather than in year 1. Year 3 will be minimal. What will stay in place as a constant over that 3 years, my suggestion is that your title of the plan, the vision for the school library, the mission of the school library over that 3 years remains the same. And then you go on and develop it in a flexible manner without losing direction, because it's all too easy when times get hard and you've not got the budget that you were expecting to lose a sense of direction. You can still move forward towards your goal, even if you've got a lesser budget. And if you are not able to get the things that you had sort of earmarked in your plan for year 2, don't just abandon them, pop them into year 3. And then you know where they are, and that gives you a feeling of all is not lost, we're just going to be delayed a bit. And any international school that's gone through a national recession, and when student numbers might be falling off a little bit, this can give you a feeling that you're still making progress and still moving forward. So just going over that in a little bit more detail, your vision and mission stay the same. That maintains direction and purpose. So that really is worth spending a little bit of time on right at the beginning of the plan. Your regular tracking will show where things have and have not worked. So you can sort of look at the assessment of your plan in term 3. Years 2 and 3 are updated, and all you're doing really is you're not rewriting the plan, you're just updating what goes into those annual plans, those sheets that I just demonstrated. And the first year of the plan sort of drops off like a rocket booster, and the fourth year gets added on, and you're ready then to add to that template as and when necessary. Some items won't have been completed or acquired. You can carry those forward into year 2. And when you bid for year 2 of your plan, then you say, this is really urgent. In the end, we weren't able to afford this because X, Y, and Z was a bit more expensive than we thought. The currency exchange rate changed and everything became more expensive. We had to drop certain items. So we're going to carry that forward into the next year and it'll become super urgent then. Delayed items are added into the next year, and some items, however, if you thought that they were necessary at the beginning of your plan, but actually you haven't got them and you haven't missed them, drop them out. They don't have to be in all over again. So you don't have to carry forward. If you think, you know what, that's more urgent than that, get rid of that, and let's have this. So the second year addition, year 2 of the plan. Year 2 will be in new detail, year 3 will be in outline, and year 4 will be minimal. And then the one after that, you've got the final edition. Years 1 and 2 have dropped off. Year 3 is there in detail. You've updated that, and it takes you a whole year or more to actually write that. So you've got plenty of time to think about the updating of those things and then resubmit your development plan as your bid document for the next year and the next year and the next year. So you can show consistency and direction, and that's what leadership teams like, especially if it all fits in with the overall schools development plan, which has been agreed at the top level. So harmonizing with the school development plan, the school progress or improvement plan is so important. And the schools, and I think pretty much all of you will fall into this category, who are being inspected or being accredited. This is the sort of stuff that accrediting teams look for. Is there a direct connection between what teams in the school think is valuable and the spending of the school? Is it from a team that's generating these things, or is it top down? And top down schools tend not to make such an impression on accrediting teams as teams which function together and effectively. So this can be really important to the school as a whole, and to gaining accreditation, getting inspection categories and assessments can be really important. So you doing this job helps the school. So tracking. This is the first sort of 2 slides, just showing how you might track. And this deals with what I call the dreaded KPIs. KPIs are bandied around in management speak all over the place in business, and tends to be used in school by school leadership teams. KPIs, key performance indicators. It's like any form of language, and it's like any form of language you develop with the kids. Once you know it and understand it and how you can use it, it becomes not dreaded KPIs. It can be really useful if you know how to use them. And I think the important part of this acronym is the I. These are indicators. They're not necessarily precise measurements, but they indicate how well you are doing. And some of these indicators can lend themselves to measurement, and they are quantitative numbers. So the first thing that, in my view, a departmental head should be able to do is to track their spending against their budget, and to look at the spending per student by school section that you've got in your budget, so that you can show that you're in control of it. And this helps you, again, justifies your spending and your bigger budgets in future years. Make friends with the accounts department. They do this as their bread and butter. And if you are proactive about seeking them out rather than shying away from them, the business team can be so useful to you. was I on target in my operational budget, in my capital budget? Did we overspend? Did we underspend? When the spending, the acquisition was made from overseas, what was the effect of the exchange rate? Oh, I've got a little bit of extra money because the exchange rate was favourable between dollars and pounds. We bought in pounds, we're funded in dollars. I can now afford an extra few books for the secondary library. The accounts team and the business office are your friends, and they do this sort of thing as their bread and butter. So work with them if you can.
I think that's really important what you're saying, Andy, to see kind of, because perhaps it's not always vocalized, but just the same as the teachers, they want the best for the students.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to slip into that kind of, I've done it myself, I'm sure, like, oh, well, we won't be allowed to have it, without kind of thinking
Yes.
in any depth.
Yes.
Whereas if I'd got my plan, I'd be able to say, yeah, but
And I've got my budget line, and I was due to spend this much money on this set of books, or these resources, or this subscription. It was billed in pounds, but we spend it in dollars. You know what? The dollar's just boosted up because Donald Trump's just got elected. So therefore, there's a nice side effect, and we can afford more.
Chloe's just said she found €900. Well, not her personally. I don't think she means dinners on her, but by talking to the finance department. So yeah,
That's
a little
really
bit
good.
more.
I'm really glad you said that, Chloe, because so often people who are department heads regard the business office as their enemies, and sometimes they play up to that vision. As I said this morning, I went to one training session. It was given by a business director at the American School of Japan, and he said, "They call me Doctor No at school." And in fact, he said, "I'm not like that at all. I want to help." And that's their job, to help you. And they like to help you when you show that you understand what their position is. And Chloe, I think that's brilliant that you can find that extra €900 just by, talking to the accounts department. Brilliant. You will have statistics that are quantitative, numeric, that I know almost nothing about, and you will know lots about. So things like the number of volumes that you want to have in your library per head of student population, the size of the collection, the lending stats that you can now do. You can track from your Olivers and your Follett tracking systems. All these online stats and data can be used, and make friends with the IT department, or get someone in the library team to have to build up their experience in this area of data selection and data use as evidence that you're on track or whatever. And again, using a simple standardized survey with Google Docs that you do every time, the same time every year, and normally asking the same question, can convert very neatly, if you ask the right sort of questions, to automatically generated data and nice little pie diagrams, which always go down well when you're reporting in your end of year. This is what we've done. A few pie charts and a few graphs. Yeah, that impresses.
And the beauty is now for me, because actually I was putting together a survey last night, and I kind of knew exactly what I wanted. I thought this is going to take ages to type out. Quickly told ChatGPT, and he just came back with a beautiful survey for me to
They
check.
designed it for you. Oh, it designed it for you.
He's a he in my life. I don't know why.
I'm going to have to stop using that as an enemy, or seeing that as an enemy, and start using it as a friend.
He's definitely a friend, or can be
Yeah.
a friend, an unreliable friend at times, but a friend.
There you go. Right. And here's the qualitative side. Now, the qualitative side, these are words, descriptions, and you can use this, you can gather qualitative data in those same Google Docs surveys by asking people their opinions, rather than, to express in words what they feel, rather than just a tick box. The tick box gives you the quantitative, what's your opinion about this, gives you the qualitative. And I used to pick out key quotes. This was great for getting quotes. and you felt, oh, yes, I've hit the spot there. And then that gives you a clue about how you're going to interact and how you're going to get the enthusiasm thrown back to you. And it also is a good warning system that you think you might be doing well in one area, but someone has written something, well, this was not as good as I was hoping for. And you can actually preempt them by saying, I want to talk to you about da 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 da. What did you mean? And then that gets them on side. And I said, as I say, regard these people as your clients, and these are client meetings. Get events and event feedback. Have a visitors book in the library and get people to make comments in your visitors book. And again, easy thing to do. And get the parents to write it. If you get a governor visit the library, if you get the head of school visit in the library, make sure they write in your visitors book so you can get their, incontrovertible, they'll say nice things, and you can take that forward and put it in your development plan for the next time.
As Andy says, please do spread the word about BISLN. The network's growing and the feedback we're getting is great. So big thanks for that. It's been so wonderful to chat today, and hopefully you're feeling a little more equipped for creating those long-term library development plans. Andy and I are looking forward to being in touch again for our pop-up library sessions on the 18th of February. It'll be exciting to hear all your library news. We'll be in touch soon, but as always, if you need any help and support, be sure to reach out to us. For now, take care and bye-bye.